Lee County School District. My goal is to have an educational program implemented for educational professionals in Lee County. And these would be educational seminars put on by Christy, because she's one of the most knowledgeable people I know about sexual trafficking, and more specifically child sexual trafficking. And these are very easy seminars to implement on in-service days where teachers are already at school, and we are giving them tools and resources that they can use in their classroom, and they can use to educate anyone they come in contact with and help the students in their school who need their help. And I really hope that you guys are able to see the importance of human trafficking and bringing awareness to this global epidemic and doing our part in order to stop it and stop this multi-billion-dollar industry. Thank you.
Any board member comments or questions?
Yes. Ruth Ann, thank you very much for bringing this powerful presentation to us. I was compelled to invite you when I saw it at the School Health Advisory, and it was very, very well received by all the other members of our community who are members. And I really thank you for taking the approach to tell us about what we see in our schools every day and the need for our educational professionals to be trained to recognize the signs and then know the mechanism for reporting. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Gittens?
Do you have any data on the number of teachers that do report?
There isn't any, because when people call into the National Trafficking Hotline, all the reports are anonymous, so they don't take any data on who is reporting. And so I don't have any specific data on teachers who are reporting, but I do know, I talked to my global politics teacher about education in human trafficking, and she hasn't received any education, so she doesn't know to report.
So how do we get that into the schools? Have you talked or tried to present it as something that would be done in the schools or at the teacher training days?
So I gave this presentation to my school administration and then also to the School Health Advisory Committee, but my main focus was to bring it to the school board so it could be implemented district-wide, because it's the easiest way to get it into multiple schools is through the district. And again, that like I said earlier, it would be more on like kind of in-service days where teachers are already at school, and then the seminars would go on then.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes, you did a great job, thank you. Did you happen to do any research on what we do within the schools for students? In other words, in our health classes, you know, this goes down into, let's say, in the middle school grades. Yes, the teachers are an excellent resource, but I'm thinking the best friends, the friends are also a wonderful resource. And so if they were knowledgeable about hotlines that they could call or ways that they could get involved, and if we could, you know, I don't know if we have a unit in our health classes that would cover this, or at least in part cover it, I think that would be an excellent, something excellent for you to add. So have you considered the part that a student might play?
Yes, so I thought about putting the education into our classrooms, but the research that I conducted is really hard to add to curriculums in public education, because it's like public education, so it has to be in like the state curriculum. But also in regards to health classes, I have never actually formally taken a health class, and they're not required, and I know a lot of students don't have room in their schedule for health classes. The one that I did take was online, but that was a graduation requirement, so it wasn't really something, it was mainly on like drugs and alcohol. I don't remember ever having a unit on human trafficking. And in the health classes that from middle school, they were mainly about like biology and puberty. It wasn't really, and like how drug and alcohol affects your body. It wasn't about the signs of human trafficking. But I do think that students know each other the best. So if we were more knowledgeable about it, we would know what to do. But I also think that students are very scared of administration and adults, especially authority figures in their life. So that can intimidate them to report anything that they see wrong, we can even see it in like bullying. That doesn't always get reported. So I think that the most effective way is for adults to be trained to see the signs and report it themselves.
Yeah, and I think you've made an excellent point there, and this may be something at a later date that we as school board members look into, because we do have health classes in our district, but, and obviously what you said is absolutely true, that we can't go to the state and have things added to the curriculum in that way. But, you know, we've had in the past different organizations in the schools that you know, anti-drinking, the MAD, and those kinds of things. So that might be something in addition to training the teachers, that we can have some kind of a program to let the kids know if they see something with their friends, that it's really, really important for them to find an adult that they trust that could turn it in, maybe a counselor, or just make available some hotlines. Just some things that I would like to think about as a school board member.
Yeah, I think having outside organizations come in and give talks to the students is important. Like on Friday, we had Christy from Christy's Cause come in and talk about human trafficking during our mentoring period. And I know my global politics class, she's come in I think twice now between this year and last year to talk about her organization and what she does. And I know I looked over today in global politics, one of my friend's binders, and he had the Christy's Cause business card in his front pocket. So I think it is very important to have these outside organizations come in.
But thank you for what you're doing.
Ms. Gittens?
That's okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask the board, actually, what would be our next steps, rather than, I mean, to kind of know what do we do from here as far as helping with that program?
Well, I think let's get everybody's comments first, and then
Yeah.
Ms. Giovanelli.
I just want to thank you that it's great. I was made aware of human trafficking a few years back, actually at least 5 years ago, and from someone that was human trafficked. So it's really important, and I think public awareness is the start, and start at airports and bus stations and right down to the teachers. But I mean, everyone needs to be observant and aware, and you have to look for the signs. It's not going to be easy to see sometimes, but I just want to thank you. That was very good. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say that your presentation, let's put the content aside for a second. You were very confident and passionate, but yet controlled, which brought credibility to your presentation.
Thank you.
So take that with you going forward and grow from there. I mean, you presented to us like a professional, and that was very impressive. In terms of the content, I do have a question. Are we third in the country because we're the state with the third largest population, or were you able to identify something that we're doing wrong in terms of our laws or our approach to public education?
So we are third in the nation, and I believe I think part of it is because we have one of the largest populations, because if there's more people, there's going to be more cases to look through. But also, I believe that we are not doing enough to prosecute those who are human trafficking. I know our Attorney General, Pam Bondi, had a human trafficking coalition kind of going on a couple years ago, but before that, before her coalition, I couldn't find any data on what Florida as a state government was doing for human trafficking.
Great, awesome. So I think the next step is to ask the superintendent to discuss with staff the feasibility of pushing this out to teachers in the schools. Is that appropriate? Talk about it with maybe Dr. Pruitt and her staff, and figure out what, if anything, we can put together, and then either report to us at a meeting or in individual meetings.
I'll bring it up at our next cabinet meeting.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, thank you very much. And I know there's many more organizations out there that deal with this as well, that have been here for so many years. And they do participate in the local events to share information with kids, but I think the kids and adults as well, but I do think that you're correct. And what Betsy said was really, or Ms. Vaughn said, that students are really important to us because they actually know you and they see that. So, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
And was that one of the topics that we're doing parent, Mary, from Ms. Fisher, from last night's Student Advisory Committee? We saw a schedule of parent seminars that we're holding regarding student behavior and things to be out on the lookout for.
And I don't know that that was one of the topics
Okay.
at all, but I will say that, we do have a comprehensive health education policy, and I'm hoping that we will be up to speed in implementing that policy as it was prescribed, and this is all part of the big picture. Human trafficking is important. It has a big impact on many of our students, and along with some of the other topics that come under that umbrella, I think if we were implementing it in our schools, we would have a heightened awareness not only with our educators, but with our students. So I'm advocating for that.
Ms. Gittens?
I was just thinking too about DAC, that I can bring this up as one of our topics, possibly because that's a group of parents and teachers and educators, and it would be a good way to kind of get that out, because they do go back to their SAC meetings at their schools and talk about the topics as well. So it's kind of a way to get it out kind of quickly. And I will say thank you so much. One day you're going to have this seat, right?
Thank you.
Do you want to tell Ruth Ann what DAC and SAC are?
Oh, I'm sorry. Shouldn't have that. Okay, DAC is the District Advisory Council. It's like PTA type thing. And then they have the School Advisory Council at their school. So if we could get that topic out, that would be excellent to do it that way.
All right, we don't normally clap for our presenters at a briefing meeting, but I think we
One
should
more.
today, yes. Ms.
Yeah, so I
Fisher?
just wanted to say that when I saw, I've been involved on and off with the Human Trafficking Coalition for many years, as probably has Debbie. And when I saw Ruth Ann's presentation, I felt that it was so spot on and so well-researched and presented that this was an opportunity for her to start with us, and then have us maybe take it a little bit further and have our educators be, have the information available to them so that it would help. So I just want to compliment you one more time, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Next, we have a safety and security update with Mr. Parfit.
Okay, and as Mr. Parfit comes forward, just to give you a little bit of an update regarding our fake threats, real consequences, we had a press conference today. Ms. Fisher attended on behalf of the board at the request of Cape Coral Chief Hanley, and that was again to address the issue of threats. We've had, unfortunately, 20 since winter break. We have had 5 arrests, 3 of which were in Cape Coral, and so Chief Hanley felt the need to, again, get the communication out to parents and guardians that we need to talk to our students about how the seriousness of this problem. As we come up on the anniversary of Parkland, the school district is extra vigilant, and so I thought it would be timely for Mr. Parfit to come and give us a quick update relative to some of the security enhancements that we have had in our schools since that initiative began. I will say that due to some of those security enhancements, that actually directly led to one of the arrests that occurred. And had those not been done, that would have been much more difficult to investigate and prosecute. In addition to that, I just want to make board members aware that we are sending notice out tonight to parents. And also, just for your information, our middle schools and our high schools will be conducting a moment of silence on the 14th to commemorate Parkland. I know that middle schools will probably do that at the beginning of their day. We're leaving that to the middle school principal discretion. The high school principals have opted to do it at 10:17, which is the time that Superintendent Runcie had requested from Broward County. The principals felt that that would be a very appropriate time because it was during lunch duty, and to have it during a time where there's a large group of students together would be much more powerful and meaningful. So that's what they elected to do. So that's what's going on the district front. I've got, again, Mr. Parfit, I'll turn it over to you. If you could give them a safety and security update. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As Dr. Atkins said, he has a more detailed list of some of the initiatives that we've worked on and will continue to work on, and he'll be providing that shortly. But just some highlight of a few things that were started and are important. Of particular importance is the video entrances, and that's the buzzer system that we've been installing at our schools. It was unfortunate we had some delays in product, but that project's still moving along. Talking to the information system folks, we should have that completed at all the schools by this school year. So we should finish up adding those devices. That is the kind of the buzzer system at the front door that allows the doors to remain locked. We've also met with the law enforcement agencies. We've looked at some of the statutory requirements, of course, of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act, and evaluating some of the requirements there. I would say we are meeting or exceeding those statutory requirements. One that we're looking at even currently is the radio interoperability of our schools, and that our emergency service providers have radio communications in our schools, that they can communicate with their radio. So that's one of the things that the statute asks for, and that's one of the things we're currently looking at. A big part of it that I believe is not spoken to as much is the threat assessment teams, and we were really ahead and talking to other districts, and some of the folks recently were actually much further ahead than even some of the larger districts in Florida. We started our training back in July. We trained 24 train the trainers for our threat assessment team training, and it's an ongoing process, and we have 2 more training days left, and after those 2 days we will have trained members of every team of every school. So we'll have upwards to 600 people trained in threat assessment at that time. We're also looking currently at a follow-up day in May of bringing this presenter back to follow up with some of our concerns and issues that we've seen or questions that have come up through our training. Some of the bigger projects of the closed circuit TV, the upgrades Dr. Atkins mentioned. In the case with North Fort Myers, they've had a refresh on cameras. Their cameras are all new, so the quality is much better, the coverage is much better, and it helped on a case up there recently. He also mentioned, and I'll close on this, that unfortunately on anniversaries of tragic events, and Parkland included, that law enforcement anticipates that we will see a potential increase in threats. Fortunately, what we're seeing, I guess, if that's the correct word of saying it, they're not credible, and I think the positive part is that we are getting people reporting it. Unfortunately, it's making it onto social media and becoming a kind of a big spectacle before we can get a handle on it. But at least we're getting reports of those kinds of incidents, even though they are not credible. And As I mentioned, Dr. Atkins has a more in-depth list of what some of the projects that will be sent to principals and the public here today.
Excellent. Any board member comments or questions? Ms. Fisher?
Yes, so Mr. Parfit, you said that some issues have come to your attention through the trainings. What might some examples of that be?
The threat assessment trainings, we've trained our team, so we've used scenario-based situations, we've case studies and things like that, but there've always been questions about how a particular case may be handled, and probably some of the biggest things is sharing information, and unfortunately the statute says that we have to, but it hasn't really defined that yet. We haven't seen the regulations to come out from that, because once that happens, I think that people will be more comfortable sharing that information. We have a great relationship with our mental health providers, but sharing information between us, mental health, law enforcement, has always been an issue, and that's one of the areas that still unfortunately plague these kind of teams.
So then does that hamper what you might be able to do if you were able to freely share the information?
I think, I wouldn't say it hampers it. It may just slow it down.
Yeah. Okay. And then my question about the credibility of threats is, if a threat is not credible, as most of them have not been, do we need to, is that still prosecutable? I mean, there's still a big consequence for that if the threat is made, whether or not it's credible?
Absolutely.
So that's one of the things that we really need to make sure our kids understand, right?
Right. Because again, the statute changed with this Senate Bill 7026, making it a written threat to do this, made it a felony, yes.
Felony, right. Thank you.
The question I have, I was always under the impression that when a minor under a certain age was arrested or whatever, that their picture, for one, was not shown. And I've noticed recently, as young as 12 years old, I think on the news last night, they showed a young man that was 12 years old. Does that not apply now, and is it kind of at the discretion of the news sources, or?
I would say that obviously the news has some discretion there, and I can't really say complete confidence that it has to do with the grading of the offense. I think when we talk about felonies, they can file directly. They're booked like they are an adult. I think that may be the case. I think some of the cases, they're actually pulling things off of social media, some of the pictures, and you're right, that may be questionable.
And then what are the consequences long term for a minor that's, 10, 11, 12 years old? Is this felony ever dismissed, or what happens with that?
I think that's probably the big question, because it does, unless those records are expunged in some way, no, they're there. And I've seen, like you mentioned, cases that were years old, and they were juveniles, and their booking photos are still out there. I think that's the importance of the message that the school district put out with the fake threats, the real consequences, because it has real consequences.
What you see with those records, it typically has to do with the level of background screening that an organization does. There's like level 1, there's level 2. We do like a level 2 background screening, which usually gives us access to all of those types of records. Even those records that are sealed and expunged, usually the district will have access to them, whereas someone doing a level 1 background screening may not have the same level of access. And then, of course, if somebody's going into, I'm sure, secret military, I know that type of stuff gets picked up in all of those type of screening. So it depends on the level of screening of the employer, whether or not a juvenile record gets picked up. But it doesn't. It's there. I've seen records dating way back to the 50s where people have committed crimes, and it's still, it's still on the record, even though they're relatively minor.
And it still brings in, though, the question of the socioeconomics, because if you are able, financially or whatever, to get an attorney and expunge it for one child, and the other child's not able to do that, then it follows them the rest of their life. So, just a thought.
Ms. Jordan?
But just, the cost of an expungement is not that expensive, and felonies most of the time are not able to be expunged. But my question is, I know that we're doing press conferences, but who's watching those? I mean, I understand the purpose of that. I don't know if this is the right time to speak on it, but parents are working, so I'm not sure who is paying attention to that. I don't know why, or maybe we are going into the schools and doing, holding assemblies and speaking directly to these kids and making them aware of what is going to take place. And I do know that my grandson was telling me that goes on the screen at the school. But if you're pulling everybody together and even showing them the back of children's hands handcuffed, that this could be you, show them how serious this really is. Because it is hurting too many people. And they can't get their lives back. I mean, it's just crazy. That's all I have to say.
So I think that we're seeing a huge uptick because, oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand. Go ahead.
Okay. What I wanted to ask is, it's actually twofold. How exactly is the credibility determined when, you first see somebody writing a threat on a bathroom wall? And secondly, something that concerns me is, the story of the little boy who called Wolf. And, we've had so many fake threats. I actually got word from a constituent of mine, and this is totally anonymous, that in at least one school, a principal is directing, I believe, an assistant principal, if something like that occurs, just erase it because it's fake. And that's, we can play the odds and figure that it's fake, but on the other hand, it just takes that one time. So the credibility, how does it determined? And, it might behoove us to really caution the principals that even though we've had so many fake threats, that it just takes that one time.
And the credibility is determined through the investigation, the assessment of the facts that are there. And to your other point, I met with Dr. Creel's Monday morning briefing, spoke to the principals, because I don't think it was anything purposeful. It was just that they know they're not they know they're not credible. But we did cover that, and we did explain to them that if there is a written threat, even if it's on a bathroom wall, we have to let law enforcement at least take a look at it, make that determination. So,
but
yes.
My initial question, I understand about the investigations and determining credibility, but in today's world, that stuff like that is out there. Some kid will go into the bathroom and see it, take a picture, and the next thing you know,
absolutely,
everybody, it's out there. So.
Right, and the credibility also goes towards what the threat assessment would take into account as well. So it's kind of a multifaceted approach. It's not just the fact that it's written there, but we look at that also from the threat assessment side of it as well.
So I think we're seeing a huge increase because of the anniversary. I'm sorry, I looked over there and I saw no
It's me.
hand.
I was going to say, I want to say just a little something.
So I can see you, please.
Sorry.
Thank
I
you.
was going to nudge you, but I'm sorry, I apologize. My concern is that I was seeing on the news, it's reported, and I was curious if we could get the real information or if it's real news. So that Collier County and Charlotte County has a low threats. They didn't have as many as we've had a lot. So what are they doing different or what are we doing different that is reporting all these fake threats that could possibly at some point be a real one sometime? So that back to the wolf, cry wolf thing. And so my concern is what are we doing differently? Or what are they doing differently?
I can't say for sure, but I spoke to, and I don't know if it was Charlotte or another county, they were actually controlling the restrooms, for example. They were actually keeping them locked and only unlocking them when somebody had to go to the restroom, that it was taking that out of the equation. So we didn't have that because I don't know of any of the threats in the last couple weeks that have not been in a restroom. So I think one of the schools was talking about that they were looking at that. But again, it's a fine line. You have to balance that against other safety concerns.
Thank you.
And one of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas issues was that bathrooms were locked and
Yes.
kids couldn't get in and hide from the shooter when it was happening. So it's a balance. The increase is as a result of the anniversary.
Yes.
We have lots of threats surrounding 9/11 that we're not paying attention to because that's not our job. I think we have more threats than Charlotte and Collier because we have far more students than they do. If you Google fake threats, Florida public schools, Lee County shows up nowhere on the front page. Like Miami-Dade had 50 in one day. This is just the reality of our lives today, unfortunately. I will tell you from my perspective as a parent with 4 kids in the schools, I don't hesitate to put my kids on the bus every day. I don't hesitate to let them go to school and stay in school all day, and I don't hesitate to let them take the bus home every day because I feel like we're doing the best we can do. We can't avoid everything. And I do use my school board social media to push these stories out and ask parents to please talk about this with their kids because they might not be seeing the press conference, they might not be seeing the news, but they might be seeing it on social media. So, we could make an effort in that regard too to push the information out in that way, not in a threatening way, not in a condescending way, just this is our reality and we really need to be talking to our kids.
Well, we do have the posters out to every school. We put out our public service announcement out to our schools as well, and we have a website. It's on our website, a portion that's dedicated to this very movement. So that's just some of the things that we're doing. Because I do agree with Ms. Jordan and who is watching these press conferences. I look at this as just one piece of the overall puzzle that will get some folks' attention, but there's other things that we're doing as well that I think will bring attention to this because ultimately this is about educating our population. That's what we're trying to do about the severity of these types of threats in terms of what they do to our learning environment, how disruptive they can be.
Ms. Fisher?
And I was just wondering, Mr. Parfit, what percentage of our threats have been through social media, approximately?
I don't have a number. It would just be a guess, but unfortunately, that's what's driving a lot of them because they're making it onto social media before they can be handled otherwise.
Thank you.
So has this affected our attendance?
Yes.
Okay.
That was a question that, sorry. No, go ahead.
Think of that.
You finished?
Yeah, I'm finished. It was just, I was
No,
curious about it.
you did bring up something that made me think about the attendance. And with all that's going on in the hype, I am just thinking that on the 14th, there's going to be a low attendance because some parents have even said to me they're going to keep their child home. Are we prepared to address that because it is such a heightened thing and not, not to publicize that we're not going to give the child a ding on their record for if the parents decide to do that. So I don't know. It's just a thought. There's going to be a lot probably that will keep them home.
We have been talking with principals relative to how to handle this from an attendance perspective because it's not, it's already been a factor. At 2 of our high schools, we've had a significant reduction in attendance. Now, our other schools where we've seen this, it has not had as large of an impact. But because of that, we have been working with our principals in terms of how to address those specific absences.
Did it affect our second count in February at all?
I'm not aware of whether or not it's affected the second count. I just know that in a day and time, in one school, we had 900 absences, and the other school, we had 1,200 absences. So that's a huge impact. The other piece that is a bit unique to Lee County, just to point this out and not to pick on our media partners, but we're very unique in terms of the market that we reside in. We get much more attention than what is normal. So if you're talking about Collier County and Charlotte County, they're further away from the media centers, and so we're much more accessible for a comment, and we make ourselves available. So that's one reason why you have increased attention here. I did also, we still every once in a while are in contact with Amity Chandler over in Palm Beach. And she said, once she moved over there, the number of inquiries that they get at that school district, which is much larger than we do, she had like 3 versus, we have stories practically every single day and multiple stories typically. So we're a big player in town because we're the second largest employer in not a big metropolitan area, but kind of again, we're very unique, whereas if you look at a Miami-Dade, Palm Beach, you've got a lot more other things to report on in those markets, and so we tend to get more attention here. And that's not just with this, but that's with a lot of items.
Can I get a follow-up answer maybe on how the numbers were on the second count? Because the importance of that is our FTE count. So just to know if we did have a drop on that particular day.
Well, you can go back a week on the
Yes.
FYP count, so it's 2 weeks.
2
So
weeks.
it's one day. shouldn't
That's
impact
right,
that.
okay.
I've got 2 more things. First of all, this attendance issue that we're talking about really highlights the importance of the criminal approach to this, because it is a crime and it is disruptive to school. So I am very grateful to our law enforcement partners who have taken this seriously and are following through with students. We don't want to find ourselves in a situation where things fall through the cracks like they did in Broward. So I don't think law enforcement is allowing anything to fall through the cracks. Finally, I'll tell you guys, just something for us to think about as a board. I talked to Doug Dodd out of Suwannee County. He's a board member up there. I sit with him on FHSAA board. He's also retired law enforcement who sits on the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Commission. Is that the right name?
Yes.
And he called me after their meeting. He met in Tallahassee with the counties association, the sheriff's association, and the law enforcement association. And they're all looking to work very closely together. They're making very similar recommendations to the state. The unfortunate thing is that on 2 counts, the state doesn't appear to be willing to cooperate. One of those counts is funding. Every organization recommends going back up to 2.0 and using millage rate and using the additional 0.5 in millage for safety and security, hardening, and SROs. And the other thing that they don't seem to be listening to is arming teachers. That is, from what I understand, working its way into legislation. And so I think, Rob, you and me and Carol have to sort of work closely to follow that. We do have a proclamation from our union here in Lee County that was brought to us last year saying that they have no interest in teachers being armed. So I just think it's something we need to be aware of and something we need to talk to our community about and see what makes them comfortable. Any other comments or questions? Great, thank you, Mr. Parfit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have Mr. Rickenbacker next for a capital project update. Good afternoon.
Some positive news, lots of great things happening in the construction division. Currently, East Zone Middle School M&M is scheduled for noon time. Tonight, I believe we'll be approving a ranking for the architect and the construction manager that will be the first that we brought to you tonight.
Thank you. We currently are coming to you on the 26th with a Phase 1 pre-construction value, so you'll see that coming at your next board action meeting. And it's scheduled to be substantially complete for July of 2021, and you'll notice that's basically the same year we're opening MMM, so there's going to be a lot of construction happening next year. That particular facility has a private road, so we're working with the property. We have an easement for that road, and we're discussing ownership, future ownership with the county. They're hesitant to take that as a road, but that's where myself and my staff will work on them to try and find a mutual agreement where we'll develop the road in front of the school, connecting onto the parcel next to us and bringing it forward. I want to thank both the Finance Department, Dr. Atkins, for all those people who helped support get the mitigation credits for MMM forward. I want you to be aware that we saved $141,000. So I'll speak more to that when we get to MMM. East Zone High School MMM, we just received our 70% construction document. So hopefully at the next briefing, within the next week or two, I'll get our third station budget analysis from both the architect and the construction manager. Right now, we're at about $78 million, and we're constantly bringing that tighter and tighter. We've seen those estimates come forward in the last 3 we've discussed with you. So I think this one's really going to tell us where we are. We're still working with the county in regards to the shelter costs. They do want to engage with the shelter, but there's a couple different standards. One is ICC 500, which came out, but we believe that we can hold to the previous code requirements of 180 mile per hour winds rather than 190, and it substantially increases the cost for a shelter. Right now, if we can stay at 180, which we're hoping they will engage with us, it'll be just a little over $1 million. If we have to go to the ICC 500, which is 190 miles per hour, it could go up to 1.6 million. Okay, so we're working on that, and we'll bring that information forward to you guys through future briefings. In addition, we have a meeting tomorrow with the county, and it's in regards to the roundabout. That'll be the entry point on Griffin Drive for MMM. Just finalizing that design, adjusting it, and meeting with our Lee County Department of Transportation folks. Right now we have a project construction start. The Army Corps is on schedule. We're hoping that we can get a construction start over the summer. If the permits are released in May or June of this year, then I will release the construction manager. We're going to come to a point where I have to stop from an advertisement for bid so that I don't expend those funds, that I can get you a true bid. So in other words, if we put this out for bid in July, that'll be a real-time estimate, real-time bids, and I'll bring total project cost to you, which includes the Phase 1 pre-construction money, plus the physical cost of building the building and the FF&E and associated dollars to you for board approval. Total project cost. So right now everything's on track. The mitigation credits, with your help and the superintendent's and finance's help, we've locked in those credits, and we're hoping we get that permit released quickly. As soon as it's given to us, we're going to start moving forward. Again, that project is also slated to be completed in July of 2021. The hard building, on this building, we've actually anticipated future growth, so we have the potential, should we need to, on 2 ends of the building, to expand. We've made adjustments to our chiller plant in anticipation of that, so if this school had to pick up growth in the future, it too will be able to go to 2,500 students if needed. So that takes care of that one. Lehigh Senior underway. We started digging our footings today. We've been aggressively out there since the Christmas break. We're in the process now of rebuilding the media center. Sheetrock going up, metal stud walls. That's the first phase of our interior move throughout the campus. So as we complete those classrooms, students will be relocated into those refurbished, brand new rooms that we've built in there, allowing us to access other areas within the campus. We have a great working relationship with the principal and her staff, and it's going smoothly, and we should be pouring concrete very quickly. We have rebar that's been delivered. All of our people have been Jessica Lunsford badge. That takes a little time getting a project kicked off, but we're ready to go. The site's mobilized, and we're on schedule to have that done for start of school in August.
Awesome.
In addition, I believe you folks have gotten the change order reporting for December and January. Any questions?
Any questions on presentation, comments?
Thank you. Great update.
Okay, I do have one quickie, if I may. The curriculum department, I want to tell you what the 4 announced academies will be for MMM High School. We have cybersecurity, medical assisting, veterinary assisting, and culinary arts program. So those have been vetted through, and we're looking forward to getting the community partners involved to do just like we did at Benita and bring that all together.
How excited does that make you, Mr. Davis? Ms. Gittens, did you have a question?
You were talking about as you go along, you'll look at ways to reduce the cost. Give an example of that.
Okay, that all starts with our new process, and we have what we call the swim lane. It was created by Mark Murrah and myself. What we do is we get pre-construction funding so that we can engage with an architect, a construction manager, and a building official. Now, obviously, the architect is a fully funded design contract, but we only allow our construction managers, we contract with the construction managers and the building officials to attend all meetings. So they are involved in our design process from start to finish. We actually go in and do what we call value engineering. That's rethinking materials, rethinking layout, means and methods that can save dollars, cost efficiencies. We have them engage with us throughout that entire process, as well as the building official. You know, what are some new ways we can save money by code? Can the code help us maybe to reduce something that we didn't need to have involved in a previous project? So they also provide throughout this course, the estimating. We're getting real-time estimates from the construction managers who all have databases for local costs for each spec item that would go into a bid. And it's been real successful. We've hit the mark at Lehigh Senior. Our estimates at MMM have been within $2 million and getting much tighter, and I can't wait to see the 70%. 70% estimate that they provide us is going to be what the 5%, within 5% of what the true cost will be from a construction manager's perspective. So once we get that, obviously we have a very tight number, and the criticality is getting the bids out on the street and getting it to the superintendent and the board quickly. 30, 45 days, real-time dollars, real-time market conditions, so that when you approve the total project cost, we lock it in, we lock in the contract, and we go. So we don't have delays and cost escalations and material and labor and so forth like we experienced on previous jobs.
Okay. So just to make sure I understand this part, where you meet and come up and talk about, you know, materials and different ways to cut, that's prior to giving the bid out to the final.
Oh, absolutely. That's all part of this pre-phase 1 design. An example would be, okay, do we put VCT in the stairwells, or do we just do finished concrete, either with paint or ceiling? Those are the type of things we look at. We don't take it out of the classroom, but what items can we reduce that are cost savings? Because right now the state cost per student station is crippling. A high school right now is about $31,000 per student station. Elementary, middle, or even lower than that. It's going to be a real challenge because we have to meet those dollar values.
So you actually, by doing that process, in the end, should get the best bids. Because let's say I have a company and I come to your meetings and I realize I can't do this that they're talking about, so you end up kind of weeding out. So in the end, you get the best construction company.
That's what we pay construction managers for. We advertise. We want as many bids as we can possibly get. We prefer to have a minimum of 3. Sometimes we only get 1 for specific items, and depending on what the market is locally here. Our construction manager then will vet those bids prior to bringing a GMP to us, which is part of the total project cost. So they'll evaluate that with us. We go over that GMP, proposed GMP for us. We look at who's going to give us the best quality work, has the most horsepower in terms of local labor and materials, and also who's going to provide us with the ability to maximize on our DMP savings, meaning that's the purchase of the materials, where we take a change order back and we become the purchaser of the materials, save tax.
And I have one last question. Choosing the forget the name of it, the cybersecurity, medical, and all of that. What was the process, just basically, as far as doing that?
I can give you a rough concept. CTE and the curriculum department under Dr. Creel, they've looked at local market conditions for both labor and future. They've picked the programs that they believe have the greatest future for future learners and employability and what type of certificates they can get. Our job now, from my perspective, is we'll work with CTE closely like we did at Bonita, and we actually bring in the business partners. They help guide us in the design of those rooms for best use, and then we create the budget and go. But it was real successful in Bonita. I was really proud of some of the academies that came out of that school.
My question was, I'm sorry, my question was, I know you said culinary, and culinary definitely is, that's who we are here. But we do have culinary in Lehigh. So does that pull from those classes? Or is there enough kids for both of those schools in that same area?
Those questions were asked, and the research based from the CTE group is these markets are exploding. And there aren't enough to go around. And they've really vetted that. They've gone to seminars and outside of the district where it's supported that. So I have to believe in their research is pretty accurate.
You know, it may be beneficial at some point. We can certainly come back to the board and provide you a little bit more information. I mean, one of the reasons I pulled Rita Effing into the meeting with the governor is that I wanted to provide the governor and the Commissioner of Education really the background behind the selection of our CTEs, and just also she's very knowledgeable in terms of what we have out there. So I would be happy to bring that. I think it's it's probably timely since we are making this selection. I know that Rita will tell you that she uses a couple different sources, but she looks at high wage, high demand fields when making those selections and works with a committee to narrow them down to the ones that were selected for this particular school. So we'd be happy to provide that. In addition to that, I know this is just kind of an off related item, but Ms. Davis and I know Dr. Creel's also, we've got an invitation to her as well. We're going to meet again with Cheney Brothers. And the reason we're meeting with Cheney Brothers is really to try to continue to work on what we hope is a partnership between our culinary arts programs and one of our local providers. I mean, Cheney Brothers, as you know, is a major provider for a lot of our restaurants in the area, and so we just think it's really could potentially be a good partnership, so that meeting's coming up real soon.
Dr. Atkins, when you bring that information to the board about MMM, can you also talk to us or show us the data upon which we're relying to determine whether we're going to do a phased opening or an all-at-once opening of that school?
Yes, we will do that.
I'd appreciate that.
I got a text from Dr. Creel just, again, reminding you that we do look at regional studies that we analyze when we're making those selections for those CTEs.
Great. And I have a question for you, Mr. Rickenbarger. The cost of a roundabout versus a traffic light, are we paying for that difference, and how did we come about making
Sadly, the roundabout to enter into our property is an obligation that we bear, typically. A traffic signal would be similar, although we did some arrangements with the county with the traffic light and some land swaps, so that helped us there. But yeah, anytime you have to enter into your property, it's your obligation for the turn-off lanes, the turn-in lanes to get to it.
So how did we come to decide upon a roundabout instead of a traffic light?
Well, right now, between the expansion of Route 82 and you have at Gunnery, the whole bypass, and there's a traffic light currently at 82 and Griffin Road, the proximity from where our entrance would be to that existing traffic light is something that they don't particularly pertain to because of congestion and blockage, so they wouldn't allow us to have a light. They're on a process right now where they're building roundabouts all over Lee County, and I believe they have a high success with the roundabouts. So they guided us in that design. We've met with them several times, and they've seen our design. We're going to meet with them again tomorrow, actually, because we have a little bit more conversation to discuss.
Who's them?
Lee County DOT.
Okay, and so you said they would not permit us to put a traffic light there? It had to be a roundabout?
That's correct. When they do the traffic studies, that's where the engineers, the traffic engineers, look at it, the proximity between the adjacent homeowners association entrance, the traffic light at 82 and Griffith Road. That's all done, calculated by the traffic engineers, and right now it wouldn't support another light within such close proximity.
Understood, okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Vaughn?
You may or may not know this, just out of curiosity, when a developer comes in, does the developer have to bear the cost of lights and roundabouts as well?
Not the main roadway infrastructure, but anything to enter into the property. So if you
Okay.
had,
Okay, so we're not having to do anything that the developers don't do?
no,
Is it?
we
Okay.
are
Well,
held at,
that
we're held at the
relieves
same
my-
standard.
Relieves my mind a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, we'd love to get them, and everyone here knows that I'll certainly ask a question. I'll take anything for free, so.
Well, I mean, if they, I just really didn't know, and I thought maybe you knew, but it surely sounds like a bargaining chip, because I know the county often gives some freebies to the developers, so we're more important, I think. So anyway,
You would think. And it's a
I'm sorry, it's a little off topic.
battle that, this goes even back to Cape Coral. We were a road builder, D. Navarro Parkway Extension. In order to bring the utilities to the school, we ended up having to partner with the city to develop that road to bring the utilities in. If you look at statute, they're supposed to bring it to our front door, but are you willing to fight it and wait 2-3 years, but your population's growing? So we do what we need to do to make you all
Yeah,
successful.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I wish I was as good as Ruth Ann.
Thanks. Awesome.
It was awesome. All right, I think the next item on the agenda is, I'm not on that page anymore, public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board for public comment? Okay, so now we move on to board member comments. Ms. Giovanelli?
I have none.
None.
Ms. Gittens?
The change order that was on the agenda, was that just a part of Mr. Rickenbach's?
He asked
brought
us.
it up while he was sitting there and asked
He
if
asked
we
us
had any
about it.
questions.
I missed it. Sorry, no comments.
Ms. Fisher?
I have none right now, thank you.
Ms. Vaughn?
None, thank you.
Ms. Morgan?
I just have one from the Insurance Task Force meeting. I'm just going to throw out some numbers so we're all current. The projected plan cost for 18-19 is estimated to be 0.3% above projected revenues. The rolling 12-month claim cycle loss has improved over the previous year, so it's now estimated to be 101.5%. Of concern is that the number of large claims over 250,000 continues to rise, and that is consistent with state and national trends. I did not even know that we had teledoc, but we do.
Yes.
And the utilization in 2018 was up 14.4% from just 9% in 2017. So it looks like the redirection claim savings for teledoc runs about $245,000. So, you know, I think everybody hopes to see that usage go up. So anyway, that's my report, and I have nothing else. Thank you.
I've got a little
Thank
bit
you,
of,
Mrs. Morgan, for attending.
Oh, you're
Thank you.
welcome. I didn't know who I was attending for.
I have one question for her, if I may.
Shoot.
You mentioned a 0.3% above revenue. Can you talk to that a little bit?
I cannot.
Okay. Well,
I'm only
thank you.
reporting the numbers.
Thank
I
you
don't.
for the notes.
I cannot explain how those sheets you all gave me. I'll let you all do it.
Okay.
all right, I unfortunately have a little bit of a report to give on my trip.
Could I mention something, because it's related to what, just, I had a meeting this morning hosted by Horizon Council over at Lee County Cooperative, Electric Cooperative. It was just really a regional one with some of the CEOs in the area, and just since you brought that issue up, this is rising insurance costs and all of the things that our insurance task force deals with on a daily basis are something that, of course, our local CEOs are obviously struggling with, and you know, I'm happy to report it. You know, I think that we're ahead of most of them in terms of where we are, in terms of the options that we're offering our employees, in terms of our wellness program, and things such as that. So they're just starting to the HSA, which is something that's relatively new to our school district, but it's something that many of them are just exploring. Now, Lee County Electric Cooperative is now fully HSA, but they had done something similar to what we are doing, where they've offered a variety of plans for a while before moving in that direction. But just, just something that I think all of the major employers are struggling with, major and minor. We had some minor, small employers there as well.
Great. Six of us went to the Finance Forum for FSBA, and I know from my perspective, having gone 2 years ago and having gone through 2 budget cycles, I picked up a whole lot more than I did when I went for my first time 2 years ago. I think it was productive. I think all of us shared the feeling that it was productive, and we had a little bit of impromptu team building while we were there, which was, I thought, a lot of fun. My trip to DC, I was a little disappointed with the National School Boards Association and the partisanship that was included in some of their presentations. Day one was Dr. Norman Orstein, who's a resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, and it shocked me how liberal his speech was, given the fact that it's considered to be a conservative think tank. I feel like education issues shouldn't be divisive. We should be able to approach them from the perspective of bringing people together, and it doesn't have to be about the party. The president of the Florida School Boards Association was so offended that he got up and left the room. Dr. Orstein essentially took his time to roast the current administration. And it was disappointing to me to see a national school board advocacy institute focus on that. The next presentation was on the 2020 census and its impacts, and the fact that it's absolutely necessary for us to count every child. And again, we saw some partisanship here in the presentation. The people on the stage referred to as the current administration as being anti-immigration. I would say that we're anti-illegal immigration regardless. You can approach that subject by saying there are immigration issues in this country today, so it's important for school boards to be focused on counting every child. That takes the politics out of it and gets everybody focused on the task, which is creating a complete count committee. The NSBA suggested that we, as school boards, create a complete count committee. So who wants to be voluntold to do that?
Repeat that, please.
A complete count committee to help make sure that the public understands the need to engage in the census. I was actually thinking Ms. Vaughn would fill those shoes super nicely, given your work with the
Haitian group.
yes, and their focus on.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Would that be cool? Yeah. All right, so I don't know what it entails, but I can put you in touch with people at NSBA, and you can get the kit going and all that.
Sure.
John Meacham, who's a Pulitzer Prize winner and a best-selling author, was very entertaining. He really walked the line. He was not offensive really at all. He just gave us great insight into pretty much how the sausage is made in Washington, spanning decades. And he was
Sound good.
he was fun to listen to. The next day was about this is NSBA's thing. It's time for a great idea. Get it? IDEA? Yes. Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. It's time for a great idea. Well, the act itself has not been reauthorized since 2006. It's currently funded at a rate of 15.3%, but the legislation allows for funding up to 40%. Again, I was a little frustrated with their approach. We knew nothing about IDEA before we walked into that room. And so I didn't have a lot of background information. And one of the things they talked about was the fact that the legislation creates sort of an adversarial relationship between students and families and schools and school districts. And when I asked what about it in the law, what specific part of the law creates that adversarial relationship, well, we don't have details. We just want you to talk about that when you go see your congressman. And I'm like, I need details. I can't ask you to change a law if I don't know what part of the law you're asking me to change. So that was a little frustrating. We are in good hands with the FSBA. I will tell you that. Comparing the two organizations, I'm much more impressed with how the FSBA handles education issues. Betsy DeVos was one of our speakers. She was wheeled onto the stage. Did you all know she's in a, what's that thing called? Wheelchair. Wheelchair. She had a major biking accident and she broke her pelvis and dislocated her hip, and she's whatever. She was still very well spoken. You see some quotes in on the board from her speech that I thought were particularly impactful. And I'm not sure whether this is a change in rhetoric. I like to believe that it's an actual change in direction for her. And that change in direction is she's no longer talking about school choice, she's talking about education freedom. And I'd like to think that that is based on feedback that she's gotten. And the fact that the school choice movement, so to speak, is so divisive. She really did focus on freedom, and us as local school districts questioning everything. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? Does it make sense for a kid to be in school for 12 years if it only takes them 6 years to master the standards? Like, everything about what we do should be questioned. And then she suggested that we seize that local control that was provided to us through the ESSA law.
Let's do it.
And again, you know, we in Florida, as local school boards, don't have the ability to seize any local control because our state legislature won't give it to us. The next thing that was really interesting was Chris Graves, the president of the Ogilvy Center for Behavioral Science. He's like a psychiatrist, neurologist, brain specialist guy. I don't know what his exact qualifications are, but he knew a lot about the brain. And he said this. He said, you've got a person who's over here in terms of their belief system. I told you this.
Yes.
Person who's over here in terms of their belief system, and you need to get them over here because you want to change their mind on IDEA. For example, you're going into your congressman's office and you want to change their mind on IDEA. So you approach that person. At what point during the conversation, when you're presenting facts and data, do you think that congressman is going to start to understand and perhaps change his mind? And we were supposed to raise our hands as he walked across the stage so we could say at what point we thought he would change his mind. Do you get the point? So I raised my hand at about 3/4. I'm like, all right, 3/4 of the facts and data should be enough to open the guy's mind. Well, studies show that if you approach someone with facts and data, they actually move further into their position than they were in before. So you have to approach people with stories that evoke emotion.
Yes. Figures.
Which is so
We don't want the
incredibly...
facts to get in the way of a good story.
Exactly.
Exactly. Exactly. Don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. So I left that really, really, really frustrated, but completely understanding what he was talking about. Really eye-opening. And then the next day was the day on the Hill. We met with several groups, but the highlight of the day was, oh, wait a minute, before I tell you that, I want to tell you about a study that was done by some lobbying groups that are in DC. What is the most effective way to work with your elected delegation, whether it be your federal delegation or your state delegation? Form email messages. 3% of the time they will pay attention to those. 3%. A visit from a lobbyist. 8% of the time they will pay attention to that. Individualized email messages. 30% of the time. Contact from us. Contact from representatives who represent their constituents. So that would be us. We're like, you know, the middle layer or the lower layer of government. 46% of the time that will get their attention, and then in-person visits from constituents, 54% of the time that will get their attention. So getting people who live in Southwest Florida to travel to Tallahassee is really a big ask, but that is by far the most impactful way to do it. So I met with Francis Rooney, and I had a whole bunch of the Florida delegation with me, and his whole staff was there, including the Dunbar graduate, Kenneth, I believe is his name, who works on his staff for education issues. And Congressman Rooney is phenomenal. He does it the right way. He truly relies on what we have to say in order to determine what's best with regard to the education issues that cross his desk. But he was full of praise for Dr. Atkins. He thinks that Dr. Atkins is doing an incredible job in the school district of Lee County. He thinks the school district of Lee County is one of the best, if not the best school district in the entire state of Florida. This is Francis Rooney, who's a very well-respected guy. And I'm sitting there with my Florida delegation, and they're like, Chris, did you like set this up or something? But I truly didn't. It was just wonderful to hear the praise from him, because he's a no-nonsense guy. He's not going to tell you that if he's not. And he's had some significant interactions with you over the time that he's represented this area. And that was really, really great to hear from him. And the other thing that was great was he talked about Principal Burnside over at Dunbar. And when Principal Burnside went up and testified in front of Congress, he said that how much he loves Carl, and the fact that Carl was one of the early people to testify, and he truly set the bar for the rest of the principals. It was like, you guys got to bring your game up now that Carl Burnside has presented. And I thought that was fantastic to hear. I'd like to sort of ask for your permission, not really permission, I just want to let you know that one of the things I learned is after a visit with a senator or a representative, it's nice to write a letter to the editor. So I was just going to say to you guys that I plan to write a letter to the editor sort of praising Francis Rooney, and I just didn't want you to open the paper and read it and be like, why did she do that? It's not on behalf of the board. It's just me, Chris Patrica, school board member, that happened to meet with him when I was in DC. Are we cool with that?
Yeah.
Okay. And finally, the last part of my report is remembering Parkland. I know we've talked about it already today. I plan to search for sort of bios on all of the individuals that died that day and read about them and remember them. And I would sort of encourage you all to do the same. That's my report. Dr. Atkins? Oh, no, wait. Go to the good cause.
Oh, no, they speak first, and then we do good of the order.
Okay, my bad. Dr. Atkins?
Oh, I think I'm before you.
Attorney.
Mr. Dodig?
Thanks. I have a couple of items. First of all, you probably recall, certainly 4 of you that were members of the previous board provided me authorization to ask the Attorney General for an opinion regarding off-duty law enforcement officers and firearms at meetings. I have heard, finally, from the Attorney General's office, and they are asking for a resolution of the board to request that opinion. So I am here today to ask you all if I should bring a resolution on the 26th requesting that opinion. So that's the status of where that is at. And I've talked to the chair, and she asked me to bring this today. So if I have your consensus. I know it's Giovanelli.
So what would the resolution be? What do you recommend?
The resolution would be to officially request an opinion, not that we didn't officially already do it, but officially request an opinion of the Attorney General's office regarding the status or opinion of the Attorney General relative to the law as it pertains to off-duty law enforcement officers possessing firearms at school board meetings. That would be essentially the resolution.
Can you
Draft it?
draft
Absolutely.
so that we can,
I would draft it
'cause
and
you lost me after how last, okay.
I would draft it and put it on my recommendations at the next school board meeting, if that's
Okay.
Yes.
pleasure of the group.
Do we need consensus on that?
Anybody? Thumbs up if you agree. Everybody agrees.
All right, thank you. Second of all, I have another issue that I think the board needs to address at some point, and it is relative to legislation passed last year requiring a board auditor for the board by July 1st. That has to go into effect. This type of issue is probably best workshopped. I can certainly bring it at the next briefing. But certainly, if you are all going to employ an individual, the process for at least this position and the superintendent's position is to workshop that. So we can possibly, I can certainly address it on the 26th, but I would prefer to do that in a workshop setting if we could do that. So that's an update on that issue.
I have a question on that.
Yes.
Does it have to be an employee, or can we use a vendor?
It says employ.
Okay.
Yeah, yes. The other part of that is we do have Mr. Brown, who's internal, but he does not report to the board. So the intention of the legislation, if you were to ask me that question, you didn't, but I'll tell you anyway, was to create a position that reports to the board. Yeah. Yes.
We just learned about that at our finance.
Yes, we did, yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't want to call out people, I don't know.
And we do have, that was a position we've had in the past. So we do have something to work on as far as the criteria and the expectations.
There's a
and-
job description and a board policy
Okay.
that are both in place that, of course, we could adjust how we see fit.
Ms. Fisher?
Yeah, so how current are those, that job description and that policy?
The job description, according to the document I received from Dr. Pruitt's area, was updated fairly recently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The policy is kind of dormant. In fact, there was language added, Mr. Martin brought to the board when that position was eliminated, that essentially says that the position is not currently filled.
Right.
But the policy still exists, so that language would have to be changed, of course.
And then you'll check for statutory updates?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, I would definitely like to see it workshopped as soon as possible. I don't want to see this, we have lots of big-ticket items coming up, and I would like, even if we wind up hiring somebody, an interim person, I would like to see it workshopped ASAP so that we can, move to get somebody in place in that position.
Yeah, we have to.
Ms. Gittens?
I just think we should come to a consensus on doing a workshop and possibly prior to the 26th, if we have time to do that. Or,
I'm available, other than the end of this week and Monday.
and then also, if we're going to do that, to perhaps give the job description, policy, send it to everyone.
I'll send it to all of you, actually. I can do that
So
in
that they
between
can
meetings.
look at it and then come to the workshop with suggestions and questions, so.
Ms. Vaughn?
Oh, will you also be reporting on market rate for that individual?
I would have to access Dr.
Well,
Atkins.
that would be HR, wouldn't it?
Yes.
So HR, hello, Angela.
Thumbs up.
Market rate for,
Shall we get a consensus on the workshop?
Yeah, I think you gotta, I think to say before the 26th without consulting the superintendent and his staff might be a little prescriptive, perhaps just as soon as practicable according to people's schedules. That I can agree to.
Yes,
Yes?
that makes sense.
Thumbs up, thumbs down? Great. Ms. Morgan, I didn't see.
no,
Sorry. Okay. Great.
A question I would have relative to this position, and I don't know if Mr. Dodick has done this research. One of the things, having been a part of that last board auditor, is that I think that this board should consider. I think you want expertise in that position. Those are people that have the expertise to properly audit maintenance department, human resources department, the ISD division. What we had last time was a person who really was not equipped to do that, and so staff took a lot of time literally educating the person on the workflow of the division, and it really, I don't think it did a service to the board. I don't think it was a service to staff. So I think regardless of what is done in this case, I think it would behoove all of us to have really well-qualified individuals conduct these types of audits. So one person doing that, I think would be very difficult. And I don't know if there's hybrid models where one person spearheads it and works with consulting firms or something like that to facilitate audits in specific areas. But you think about the level of expertise. Imagine somebody trying to audit Mr. Davis's division and then turning around and trying to audit Dr. Pruitt's division and having the expertise to truly do an audit in a manner that would meet the needs of the board and the intent of the law. So that's just something that I think we probably should look into, and hopefully we would want to provide that information in a workshop, I would believe. I don't know how long that would take, but I think that would be important for you to have.
Ms. Fisher?
So then, we've had this conversation before, I remember, and so, and those were the points that were made, that we have such a variety of needs for expertise. So when we say board auditor, that could be a firm, right, Mr. Doherty?
No, it says employee.
And one employee.
Correct. I
Okay,
suspect that individual could contract with outside entities.
Okay.
To do that. I will tell you that the statute says that the internal auditor shall perform ongoing financial verification of the financial records of the school district, a comprehensive risk assessment of all areas of the school system every 5 years, and other audits and reviews at the district school board directs for determining. And then there's a list of things from A to H. So the one requirement statutorily is every 5 years, this comprehensive risk assessment. And there's other things in the statute that were added last legislative session regarding that person's role.
Can you do a listserv request and see how this is being handled by other large districts across the state?
I already have.
You have, okay.
Yes. Similarly.
Provide us with
Yeah.
that.
Similarly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, any other questions or comments? Anything else, Attorney Dodig?
I do, which is another workshop probably item, is if we're going to have a workshop, is Ms. Morgan requested a cost benefit analysis of Neola. I am just about done with that. And would be happy to present that. I think probably at a workshop setting is the best place to do that also, so.
Can that be added to
Great.
the workshop?
Yeah,
So
that's
we
what I
have
said.
2 topics.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
Yep, consensus, yes or no, on the adding it? Yes. Ms. Gittens, yes or no to
Oh,
adding
I
it?
did.
Mary?
Yes, I
I mean,
did.
Ms. Fisher, I'm sorry, I didn't
I
see.
did.
Yes?
All of us.
Dr. Atkins? Do you have any comments?
Oh, ma'am, I'm good.
Okay, Ms. Morgan, go to the order.
Order. Chair Gittens, are we going to do professional development?
Yes, we are. We are working on that. The update is, she just left. I spoke with Dr. Carlin and the superintendent about it, and we're working on some possibilities. It was decided that we would get through accreditation and then go full force into deciding and bring before you what we could do.
The reason I ask is because I sat in on the advanced ed presentation yesterday morning, and you know, it was remarkable because you had half the staff, half the cabinet here and half the cabinet there, and it was almost like watching a really well orchestrated, well, an orchestra or a basketball team or a football team. The presentations were individual with respect to departments, but aligned with one another and aligned to our Envision plan. And I was just thinking, it was a remarkable demonstration to me. I sat in 5 years ago when we had this presentation. It was a remarkable example to me of how far we've come as a district. Then I look at us, and I am concerned because I see us in silos. So we have conquered the silo problem in staff, but I am concerned about what I think are silos, independent actors, independent actions on this board. And so I am very concerned about moving as quickly as possible to do some professional development.
And we are working on it, doing, like I said, after we're finished with accreditation is when we were going to have the conversation about moving forward.
Yeah, I echo Ms. Morgan's concerns. I thought we would have done it already, because we did agree to it a month ago, and I've been looking and looking and looking for an email to come in to try to figure out when all 7 board members are available for an 8-hour or 12-hour chunk or whatever, and I haven't seen it. It is, you know, we talk about meeting as soon as possible for an internal auditor. I believe this is more important than making a decision about an internal auditor. I feel like, I'm gonna make a sports analogy, some of us are playing football and some of us are playing basketball and others are playing volleyball, and we're this team of what?
Right.
What are we a team of? And we need to be all be on the same page. Ms. Fisher?
Yes, so thank you. I was going to bring that up also. First of all, are we going to be doing our professional development with Florida School Boards Association in light of a master board training? And I think that that's a decision that needs to be made by the 7 of us, or the majority of the 7 of us. because my concern is that we are running in too many different lanes, and that we have too many individual agendas moving forward, and with neglect for the fact that we are, each and every one of us, elected constitutional officers, and our power only comes when we are together as a team. So my concern has been that we are having some difficulty getting on the same path and staying in our lanes. One of the first things I learned from FSBA when I got on the board 8 years ago was that there's a lane for board members and there's a lane for superintendent. And I see too often that we're getting out of our lane and into the path of staff and the superintendent, and I just feel like it's detrimental to us in being able to do the work that we have to do, and we have a lot of work to do. So that's.
So I think there's a sense of urgency. That's.
No, not,
Go ahead first.
not huge urgency. I really see the financial stability of this district as trumping these issues that have been brought forth by Ms. Morgan. And I want to remind everybody that as elected constitutional officers, we're elected to serve our constituents. And part of that is that we need to be sure that our school district, I have no doubts about the way we deliver education in the classroom. I have no doubts about our teachers and the staff members, most of them in the schools. But I'll be honest, I have some doubts about finances. I have doubts that maybe just because I have a different ideological view from some people, it's never, even with professional development, it's not going to be the same as everybody on the board. So I understand about the lanes, but I also understand that we do have very definitive differences of opinion on finances in the school district, and I think that needs to be respected. And I don't feel that it is respected.
Ms. Gittens.
Okay, I believe you had asked earlier about doing a workshop on transparency. And when I met with the superintendent, that was one of the things that we talked about doing. The pulling together and doing the training takes a little more time. Doing a workshop on transparency where we would have an opportunity to hear and see what does that mean to each of us, because I think that we need to find a common denominator. And what does that mean? Do I think you're telling me or you're telling me something different? So I would like to suggest that the thing that can happen quickly is for us to do a workshop on transparency and to get that out in the open to talk about what does that look like and what does it mean. And then we'll have time to move forward on the training. So that's my suggestion.
Ms. Jordan, do you have any comments?
Wow. Well, I do believe that in order for us to accomplish anything, whether it's the auditor or whatever we do, transparency, we have to make sure that we are all on the same page, and then we are working as one. Because again, we know that we're not going to accomplish anything by ourselves. So, every day we're learning more and more, and I just think that all of these things are important. And it's just in the matter of, the precedence of what do we do first. But we do have to do all of those things.
So I'm not clear in terms of priority for you.
It's what, I'm just saying, I know that all of these, that we must do all of those. As far as a priority, I think we have to be on the same page in order to get all that stuff through, even with the auditors.
But what does that mean, being on the same page?
Well, being on the same page, so if, like me, personally, I get along with everyone. I think that you have to work with people. I'm used to working with people from everywhere. And I just, and we are all different people, but we have to, we all pull strengths from each other. And I just think that we have to make sure that we are, we're here for one reason, that's to make sure that these kids are taken care of. That's the bottom line. And yes, we have the auditor, we were told at our last class we just went to, that's something that's mandatory. We have to have that person in place by a certain amount of time. So we know we have a deadline for that. So that has to take place. In which order we do it, I mean, there's 7 of us to figure that out.
I'm going to go to Ms. Giovanelli first and then back to you.
Oh, no, Ms. Fisher.
I support the FSBA Master Board Training. I loved it. So, and I told them that. I actually talked to Tina and Carol just past week, when we were there, and talked to them about that. And I said that I'm going to be pushing for that. So I'm all about it.
And how would you go about prioritizing the things that we've talked about today that this board needs to do?
I think we need to look at the calendars. I think the calendars get tight. I mean, February is a short month, so I mean, I think we talk to the secretaries, and the best of everybody's calendar is permitting and ability. I'm supportive of how we all agree on that.
I know, but we need to have your opinion in order to be able to agree. Like, where do you stand in terms of the priority of those
I think
three?
Master Board Training is going to be, if we do it with FSBA, their schedule matters. I think we better get some dates there. I think we need to get dates for the auditor and transparency. I think it all goes hand in hand. It's all important. Do I think one is heavier or weighs more than the other? Absolutely not. Everything here is important. So I'm sorry, but
I'm going to go to Ms. Moran first and then come back to you. Ms. Moran?
Oh, no, I thought Mary was.
Mary was first. Ms. Fisher?
Yes, so in terms of professional development, such as Master Board Training, that would incorporate all of the items that you have mentioned. And we can let our people from FSBA, who are expert in facilitating that all around the state, to know what our issues are. So if transparency is a piece, that can be a piece of that professional development. I don't want to see us separate things and get off track because, again, we promised as a group to uphold the Constitution and the law. And in order to do that, to make decisions about policy and oversight of this district, we have to have at least a majority of us in agreement and in consensus. And the only way we're going to get to that is to really clearly define, like you said, Gwen, what does transparency mean to each one of us? We have 3 new members, so there has to be some redefinition. So I think it's really important for us to agree as a group to do professional development that incorporates all of the areas of concern and puts us on the right track and keeps us in compliance with our responsibility to the Constitution and the law. That's.
Ms. Morgan?
And yeah, I was pretty much going to say the same thing as Ms. Fisher. The last time we did Master Board Training, essentially we laid out for them what some of our issues were. And using those issues, we worked through how we communicate with one another, how we bring things forward for board conversation, et cetera. So I think transparency is part of, it could be part, I'm not going to say Master Board Training, I'm going to say professional development. I think we need to do professional development sooner rather than later. My preference is that we do it with people who have knowledge of how school boards operate in the state of Florida because of the Sunshine Law and everything else that's involved and the regulations. But I brought it up tonight because I think this is really important. I think we can do this. I think looking at what staff has accomplished, it's incumbent upon us to look the same way to the public when we are addressing issues of concern to us as a board.
Ms. Gibbs?
I had a conversation with the superintendent, and it was basically about professional development. And I have a concern, and I'll state it like I said to him. Every 2 years, this board has an opportunity to go through storming. If each of us has a 4-year term, then you're basically saying that 2 of your years is not going to be as productive because everybody is trying to fit in. I think our goal and our dreams should be that when someone new comes on the board, that everything is running as smoothly as possible and they join the team, as opposed to, and the way that I see that happening, it still goes back to the transparency. If I'm out in Lehigh somewhere and I'm deciding whether or not I'm going to run for school board, then I should be able to look and see exactly what are you doing and what everybody is involved with. And then I make that decision, do I want to join that team and where do I see myself fitting on that team? So every 2 years, we're not in an upheaval, but it's a matter of getting to that professional development, to that transparency point, that everyone can see exactly what's going on. I understand what you're saying about having FSBA come in. Like I said, I spoke with Dr. Carlin about it. We were talking about all of the options, the timing, and everything else that we would need. And I'm asking, I know that it's something you want to do sooner than later, and we have discussed it. And again, after we finished accreditation, then we can look at going full force and presenting you with options as to professional development. So that's what I'm asking. Accreditation is over when? This week. So we had already decided we would get together and talk about what possibilities and bring it to the board and let everyone vote on it. So,
I'm not opposed to professional development. However, there's some of the statements here that give me the feeling that everybody wants to keep things the same as always. And to me, that's not, I see some head shakes, but that's what I'm feeling. And I feel like, again, as an elected officer here, I believe the public sent a very clear message in kind of the changeover that we've had in terms of some ideologies on the board, rejecting some of the let's keep things the way it is versus let's get some new ideas in. That said, the new ideas absolutely need to go in terms of, staying in the lane and not doing anything unethical. And I think maybe these two things are being confused. I'm seeing, working as one. I saw a lot of board meetings over the past several years, and there were so many board meetings where it's 7-0, 7-0, 7-0. Well, that's wonderful, except that how do you make changes? How do you move forward? You have to have some differences of opinion on issues. And so I'm not seeing, I'm seeing kind of a muddying of the waters here between we need professional development so that everybody can be on the same page. That's why I said, what is that same page? I don't think it is, are we going to go out and hang out and, it was very nice to go out and bond and do some playing trivia, for instance, when we were away. But I didn't join the board for that. I joined the board to be a professional, to represent all the constituents of Lee County and to represent their best interest. And that's part of our duty as an elected officer as well.
If I may, Betsy, we are a team. And so what does that mean? What are great teams made of? Great teams are made of individuals who are invested in each other and invested in what the outcome is. And we can't get invested in each other if we don't take the time to get to know each other. I did not join this board to be best friends with my colleagues either. But I need to understand what motivates you, Betsy. Like you just said that there are differences of opinion on finances.
I don't know that I differ in opinion from you because I don't know where you stand on finances. And so we come to this table as 7 individuals with egos. We all have egos. It takes a certain level of ego to put your name on a ballot for a public election. And so it makes it a little bit more unique. The challenges of coming together are a little bit more unique when you have 7 people from 7 different communities who have made promises to bunches of different constituents, and then you sit in the seat, and the reality of the seat is different. And my goal is to go at it hard with you sometimes, because yes, sometimes we're going to disagree. And when we get through that disagreement, we're going to be tighter as a unit as a result of that. But we need to have some openness to that process. This isn't about being a 7-0 vote every time. This is about being a team. And every team needs to grow and come together. And I believe that this board has not given the proper attention to that process up to this point. And for me, it is the most important thing on the agenda at this point.
Well, and I'm sorry, maybe I said the wrong verbiage, but to me, it's not, we have the opportunity to have conversations, to bring our strengths to each of these, every topic that we speak about. So that gives us the opportunity to tell our story of what we believe. So we may not be on the same page, but we're understanding where we're coming from.
Well, since you seem to be directing it at me,
No, because you said, I said the word page.
I'm going to say that I am discussing this because what we're discussing is the need for, some people have different ideas of what it means to come together. If there are any of you that think I'm not here to serve this district, the kids, the constituents, then you've got a very wrong handle on me. However, I just see things differently as to the motivations of this. That's all I'm saying, and I'm sticking to discussing the issue, which is the need for professional development before we get to the need to get an auditor in place and take a look at some of the issues that I see that are problematical. I see that, and you may all disagree and want to have the professional development first. I don't. I want to see an auditor in place as soon as possible.
Ms. Gittens?
I think what we're saying is, in order to move forward with some of the areas that you're talking about, the professional development piece to me, loud and clear, is being able to agree to disagree. We are not going to always agree, but the professional part of us needs to be able to understand when and how to discuss that in a professional manner, to understand both sides. That just because we are new does not mean we don't know.
Right.
And have the ability to come up with ideas that perhaps the other board did not come up with. And we've got to get to the point where we can agree to disagree. The vote may come, it might be 6-1, I could be the one, but I have to move on to the next issue at the next meeting because that is why I'm here. So our main thing is the professionalism, whether we, sing Kumbaya and love each other or not. It's, can we agree to disagree and to be an example to the community that we are here working together as professionals. And sometimes my idea you'll think it sucks. And other times you'll go, okay, we might be able to do that. And that's kind of where we need to be. Yes.
Dr. Atkins.
So let me just give you an example of disagreeing. So I disagree with Ms. Vaughn, and the reason for that is because I think as a board, and I can tell you as a staff member, we need to be able to work together and provide clear direction to staff. I think if you bring an auditor on first, then I don't think you're going to get clear direction. So I'm not opposed to an auditor. It's not, in fact, I think in terms of transparency, it's something that will help. However, I think that if you work on working together well, it will serve you better first, and then when you get into more controversial things such as an auditor or the findings of that auditor, you'll be better equipped as a team to move forward and provide direction to me and my staff in terms of what we need to, where we need to go from here. Just one opinion of this, and I am a member of this governance team.
That's right.
You're elected, I'm not, but I am a member of the team.
All right, so why don't we do the first thing? Can we get consensus, because I do think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. So I don't think we have to wait until the next board meeting to decide that we're going to decide to have training. I think we can decide that now.
We already decided that.
Thumbs up, but it hasn't happened. So thumbs up, can live with it, or thumbs down on FSBA Master Board training? Great. So I don't know that there is any other consensus required, because we can just work to
So
get it scheduled as soon as humanly
So
possible.
then what Dr. Carlin and I were working on, you're saying just don't do it, you're going, we're going to do master board with FSBA.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not exactly, but that's okay. What I was asking was the opportunity
is it?
for us to.
Yeah, what is it?
I mean, we have no frame of reference.
Okay, it's already voted on and.
Well, no, I
consensus.
mean, if there's something better, then what is it?
I mean, we need,
don't know
that's
what
what
we're
we need.
talking about.
The information is all there, and we just need to look at it, all of us, and then vote on it. I mean, it's not
I
like.
know, but we needed to gather the information to give you a concise answer to what the other options were going to be. That's all I was asking, was until the end of the week, so that we could get back to you with the other options, but that's
I
fine.
feel like staff is looking at us like,
I know,
I looked at my
that's fine.
parents when they fought when they were kids. Like, oh, I don't want to I don't want to watch this anymore. Ms. Morgan, did you have something to
No,
say?
I think I've
Ms. Giovanelli?
I think it'll be simple. We just look at the calendar that FSBA has, and I think we can schedule it, and I think it'll all work out the way it's supposed to.
Okay, so the next item of consensus I think we need to reach is, do we have consensus that this is the priority in terms of scheduling meetings for the board? Thumbs up, thumbs down, or I can live with it?
I don't know what that.
You mean professional development?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we need to do that first, because if we don't do that, we are not going to be postured. We need our foundation in place so that we can then build on that.
So thumbs up, thumbs down, or I can live with it?
I'm fine.
Great. Okay, any other comments?
I'm not sure why the issues that I brought up today got kind of boiled into that.
Right.
And so am I,
Timing thing.
okay, so
It's just a
I'm not bringing anything back until I'm told that there's a workshop. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't see why we can't schedule that. I don't understand.
We can, but if we're looking at the calendar and
Well, I think that's
February 22nd is either a workshop for an internal auditor or professional development, this board has said professional development comes first. So it's giving direction to staff with regard to the scheduling of these items. That's all.
So, but just, sorry, go ahead.
And if I may, I mean, if there is another option other than FSBA Master Board, we should have that information and then make the final decision at the end of the week, because in all fairness to everyone, just to make sure that we have picked the best option.
Yeah, but
I think
see,
it's still optional.
What we're faced with is one person is working on this and has committed to a path.
No,
The rest of us haven't had that opportunity to have that conversation. So we've either had that conversation now, and we've agreed on a path based on prior experience and what our expectations are, and we move forward, or we step back and we have another conversation about this, and we have the opportunity to look at what everybody wants individually to get in terms of expectations for this process. So.
Okay, may I say to that, and I know you're speaking of me, I was working with staff to do it at the behest of the superintendent. And no, we have not made any decisions. What we were getting together was information to bring to the board. That is now done, because you have all decided that we will do what you have said. So, and no, I did not prepare anything without everybody else. So, just to
No,
be on
I don't
record.
think that that's what she was saying. I
No,
think
that's
she
what
was-
she did say. She did say.
May I tell you what I heard? I heard that you're coordinating this and we're unaware of, all right, whatever. Meeting adjourned.
Okay, thank you.